The first death was a tragedy. The second was a declaration of war. And the money? The money was just a distraction from the poison running through the veins of the Saint-Clair family. Our story begins in the suffocating opulence of Oakhaven, the Saint-Clair estate, where even the air felt heavy with inherited wealth and long-held resentments. Elias and Julian were twins, identical in face, but polar opposites in temperament. Elias was the sun, golden, favored, the natural heir. Julian was the shadow, brooding, artistic, living always in the reflected glare of his brother's success. When their father, Arthur Saint-Clair, died mysteriously, a sudden cardiac event followed by a tumble from the deck of his yacht on a perfectly calm sea, the inheritance threw Julian and Elias into immediate conflict. Arthur's final will split Saint-Clair Industries, a global finance behemoth, 50-50. Neither brother could make a major move without the other's consent. "This is insulting," Elias sneered during the first board meeting after the funeral, his expensive suit impeccable, his voice sharp. He knew I was the one running the show. "Julian, you'd liquidate the whole company to buy a vineyard and paint the walls purple." Julian, nursing a glass of bourbon he hadn't ordered, just stared. "Perhaps I would, Elias. Perhaps I will. The difference is, I have the right now." The tension between them was palpable, a live current running beneath the mahogany tables. But the true volatility was not the money, but the woman standing silently beside Elias, Vivian Saint-Clair. She was the lightning rod. A woman of sharp intelligence and devastating quiet beauty. She had married Elias 3 years earlier. Not for love, Julian suspected, but for the stability and stature Elias promised. But Julian had seen the way she looked at him when Elias wasn't watching, a desperate, haunted look that mirrored his own. Julian had loved her since the moment Elias had introduced her, a love that festered into a constant, agonizing desire. The constant fighting over the estate wore Vivian down. Elias grew crueler, treating her as another asset he owned, snapping at her when she dared to voice an opinion. Julian, meanwhile, became her confidant. He found her in the sprawling, underused library late one stormy night, staring out at the ocean that had claimed their father. She was wearing a silk robe, the kind that whispered promises with every movement. "You should be sleeping, Vivian," Julian murmured, stepping out of the darkness. She turned, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something far more dangerous. "Sleep is for the innocent, Julian. I feel anything but." "He's driving you insane, isn't he?" Julian asked, his voice low, intimate. He wasn't talking about the inheritance, he was talking about Elias. She didn't answer with words. She simply closed the distance between them. The air was thick, charged with years of repressed longing, guilt, and the audacity of their mutual betrayal. When their lips finally met, it wasn't gentle. It was a release, a fierce, desperate confirmation of the dark truth they had both carried. The betrayal was swift, electric, and fueled by a recklessness born of grief and danger. It was a stolen moment in the center of the Saint-Clair empire, a silent declaration that some laws, like the laws of brotherhood and marriage, were meant to be shattered. Julian pulled back, his breath ragged. "We shouldn't have done that." Vivian's fingers traced the line of his jaw, her eyes dark pools of heat. "You've wanted to for 3 years. Don't lie now. It's the only real thing that's happened in this house since Arthur died." Their rendezvous became a dangerous, irresistible habit. Stolen moments in the greenhouse, secret late-night meetings in the art studio, fueled by whispered secrets and the thrilling scent of transgression. Julian was not just falling for Vivian, he was falling into a trap. But the pleasure of holding her, of seeing that raw, naked need in her eyes, eclipsed all reason. Elias noticed the shift. Julian was too calm, too agreeable in their business disputes. Vivian was too distant, too quiet. Elias, driven by suspicion and arrogance, decided to take action. He called his lawyer, intending to find a loophole in the will, some way to legally bankrupt Julian and take back full control. "I won't share this empire with a failure, and I certainly won't share my wife with him either," Elias told his mother, Helena, one evening, his voice shaking with rage and wine. Helena Saint-Clair, a woman whose refined beauty was etched with years of calculated patience, simply watched him with cool eyes. She had always been the quiet power behind Arthur, the one who truly understood the mechanisms of the empire. That night, Julian and Vivian were meeting in the pool house, an isolated glass structure overlooking the main pool. Their illicit passion was at its peak, a silent, intense fusion of bodies, meant to defy the world that separated them. It was nearly midnight when a violent splash broke the silence. They scrambled, pulling their clothes back on, hearts pounding. They ran out to the deck just in time to see Elias, fully clothed, face down in the deep end of the illuminated pool. He wasn't moving. Julian dove in instantly, pulling his brother out. It was too late. Elias's eyes were open, staring sightlessly at the cold, starry sky. The doctor pronounced it drowning, perhaps a fall caused by too much wine and a misplaced step on the wet deck. But the police found something else, a small, almost invisible bruise on the back of Elias's head, consistent with hitting the concrete edge, or being pushed. The storm broke over Vivian immediately. She was the one who stood to gain everything. Now she was a wealthy widow, free from a loveless marriage, and in secret love with the man her husband hated. She was the primary suspect. The police noted her lack of tears, her careful composure, and the undeniable truth. She was the only one who truly benefited. Julian fought for her, but the suspicion was a heavy cloak. He was desperate to protect her, blinded by the love that now felt tainted by his brother's blood. He knew they were innocent of this crime. They were guilty of the betrayal, yes, but not the murder. Julian started reviewing the details, driven by the need to clear Vivian's name. He kept going back to his father's death. It felt too clean, too convenient. A cardiac event before the fall from the yacht. He sought out the family's private physician, a frail old man who hesitated before speaking. The physician confessed that Helena had insisted the medical report be finalized quickly, classifying Arthur's death as purely natural, a heart attack followed by an accidental fall. "But what did the autopsy really show?" Julian demanded. "Trace amounts of digitalis, Mr. Saint-Clair. A slow systemic poison that mimics heart failure, untraceable after a few days in the blood. But Arthur's original autopsy, it suggested something synthetic." Julian felt the blood drain from his face. Digitalis, a poison that only someone intimately familiar with Arthur's routine could administer. He confronted Helena in the rose garden, her favorite place. She was clipping a pale white rose, her expression serene, almost triumphant. "It was you, wasn't it, Mother?" Julian's voice was barely a whisper. "Arthur's death, it wasn't natural." Helena continued clipping the rose. "My dearest Julian, you always were the sensitive one, the smart one. Why? Why would you kill him?" She finally looked up, her blue eyes colder than the stones of the estate. "Arthur was going to sell the company. He was going to retire to a small villa in Italy, take Vivian, and cut off both of his sons and me. He was going to dismantle my life's work, my legacy." She threw the clipped rose into the dust. "But Elias, that was different. That was for you, my darling." Julian stared at her, horrified. "For me? I was the one he wanted to ruin. You were my favorite, my Julian. Elias was too volatile, too arrogant. He was going to cut you out, Julian. He told me so himself. He was going to use his power to push you to the brink. I simply removed the obstacle. Now the Saint-Clair fortune is yours, all of it, and you will run the company exactly as I have always intended." Julian finally understood the depth of the rot. Elias wasn't the favored one. Julian was the gilded cage, the prize Helena wanted to control. She had eliminated the opposition, both Arthur and Elias, to put her cherished son in the ultimate position of power, knowing he would ultimately be ruled by her influence. She had played the ultimate game of high finance and cold-blooded murder. Helena was wrong. Julian had finally found something he wanted more than the Saint-Clair empire or his mother's twisted approval: freedom and Vivian. Julian and Vivian gathered the evidence, the physician's testimony, the subtle inconsistencies in Helena's behavior, the hidden journals that revealed Elias's sudden change of heart regarding the will. The scandal was seismic, rocking the foundation of Saint-Clair Industries. Helena, the matriarch, arrested on charges of double homicide. Julian and Vivian stood together on the dock where Arthur had died, watching the sunrise over the calm water. They were free, but at a cost. "We have the company now," Vivian said softly, the morning light catching the gold in her hair. "We can run it, Julian. It's what everyone expects." Julian took her hand. "I don't want it. Not the empire, not the poison, not the ghost of Elias. We were drawn together by a lie and a crime, but the love that came from it, that's real, that's clean." Vivian smiled, a genuine, luminous smile he had never seen before. "What do you want to do with a fortune that big?" Julian looked at the rising sun, at the promise of a life unburdened by titles and inheritance. "We liquidate it. We keep enough for us, for a life of our own, on a remote island where the name Saint-Clair means nothing. And the rest, we give it away. We set fire to the old rules." He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, the fear and the guilt finally receding, replaced by the profound sense of a second chance. The betrayal, the murders, the dark desire, it all led them here to this morning, where they chose each other over everything their family had ever valued. They kissed, a kiss that tasted of salt, freedom, and an uncertain yet happy future, the shadow of Oakhaven falling behind them forever. The game was over, and they had won the only prize that mattered, each other.